Here we are today, another On Point, a bit of an unusual one because I've revisited a job that we did a long time ago with Sir Robert McAlpine. So I've been invited in, which is really nice, by Craig Chandler, who's the project manager for this great job. Welcome, Craig.
Hello, Rob. Thank you.
It's been a while since we caught up. It must be a good year or something.
I
think handed over.
Yeah, absolutely. So the project finished in mid-December 2022. I think you finished just before that, actually. So it was a fantastic project for all of us, really.
Yeah, no, it looks great, and we walked around and we captured some good shots, and seen it in all its glory. But as we sort of come, this is obviously an original meeting room and stuff like that. What kind of memories do you have of the job?
Fond memories of obviously the sort of the work. I think from my side of things, being a construction project manager, you look for challenging projects, and this was certainly one of those. I think our biggest challenge was just keeping sort of the building operational, which we achieved. There's the added sort of challenge of the church has got it leases it's the basement to the health centre, so it's an NHS health centre. And at the time we started the project, it was the height of COVID. So we had to sort of maintain not only sort of the church from a spiritual point of view, but obviously sort of the health centre and their huge demand that was placed on them. That was our biggest challenge. So
I hadn't realised that. I didn't realise that was a thing. So, I know they kept services going through the whole thing.
Yeah, we had a period. It was an unforeseen. There was an issue with the plaster ceiling, so that then evolved into sort of a wholesale repair scheme with an internal scaffold, a Berkay scaffold. So that was the only sort of time when the church actually closed, was the bringing in of scaffold materials and then obviously sort of removing. Beyond that, it was fully operational throughout. So, and obviously you guys did play a big part in that, because we had to sequence your works to sort of accommodate the needs of the church. So I think it was a case of working on the west vestibule to allow then the central narthex and east vestibule to be operational, and then it was swapped around. So it was a challenging project.
Is this a sort of typical Sir Robert McAlpine job, or?
No, it's not typical. I think working with an eminent design team like we did, and working on a challenging project which we did, I think that sort of ticks a lot of boxes. But I think if you ask anybody, SRM, obviously we've got a long history of complex engineering, and we had that to a degree, but it was just on a much smaller scale. So it was a micro project of what is SRM's bread and butter.
Yeah.
So.
Because I know, you do sort of big scale projects. I think you just finished a big hospital.
Yeah. So we do. We've got obviously different divisions within the company, and obviously we have healthcare, which obviously in the last 5 years has really sort of taken off. So this project came out of the Special Projects division of SRM. So right. We're dealing with sort of the historical or architectural sort of significant buildings in and around London.
So with the On Point, the point is really potential, opportunity, impact, needs effectively, and any transformation that's needed in industry. And obviously as a top tier one contractor, I imagine you have real insights. So where's the potential, I think, to really change the industry as it is?
I think this project sort of represents a really good example of that. I think where you've got obviously that sort of drive towards sort of costs and sustainability, and actually sort of we made it contemporary. It's from a aesthetic point of view as well as sort of a usability point of view. It's become sort of we've sort of made it current, and maintained that integrity of the building, really, which is great. I think the purpose of this project was to remove it from the at-risk register. So we looked at it had a new roof and things like that. So we dealt with the fundamentals, but then also things like making the building much more sort of sustainable and making it sort of so it's cutting down on costs and actually sort of in the long term with things like your doors, you know, sort of it being put into a seasonal mode, you know, things small changes like that.
So was the brief sort of like sustainability? Did you get to reuse any?
I think, to be honest, that's probably sort of a question you could answer really, because I think from, like I said earlier, I think your involvement predates us, and I think you were part of that early discussions with Caroe Architecture, just in terms of what that remit looked like. Obviously, we took it on, but actually, sort of the early work, the groundwork was done by you guys, really.
Well, I mean, I mean, it was great to work with Caroe, and they had a vision of trying to make it as robust but as filigree as possible. The use of the materials, so they blended in, trying to keep, as you say, you're working with, you know, historic building, but at the same time bringing, you know, we were using bronzes and as slim line as possible, but to be functional, because a lot of things we work on, you know, architects can go, yeah, no, I want it to look no hands free, but then it's got to work. You know, there's an awful lot of traffic that goes through, and you know, a year down the road, and we haven't had any call outs, which is great to hear.
Yeah, it's testament to the product. I think.
And I think their design and, you know, like just, you know, we worked together. The teams work together because, you know, you've got undulating floors, you've got, you know, walls, there's curves. So to put something in, so it doesn't look like it's a bolt on. It's actually it's been thought about and it's integrated well into an old building. But in terms of you know, what did sort of SRM find on doing a job like this? Would it lead to a potential? Okay, we would do some more of this. Is this?
Yeah, I think there's certainly a lessons learned exercise. I think we would do things slightly differently. You know, how we approached it. It was set up in a really challenging time, sort of socially and obviously sort of economically.
Yeah.
So I think we weren't able to hit the ground running as much as we liked. I think our program from day one was basically sort of out of date because of the impacts of sort of in society. But yeah, I think there's certainly a drive, particularly within SRM's Special Projects sort of division. This is our bread and butter. I mean, this is we're used to dealing with the big projects, but ultimately, like it's still, you apply the same principles to any size project, and that's effectively what we've done. We think we've given a good service here, and they've got a fantastic sort of building now.
Yeah. And opportunities wise, so. Encouraging other sort of smaller subcontractors. I mean, it was lovely to be sort of sited. You know, I could see a whole wall on the glass of other subcontractors and everyone who's involved in the project, which I think brings sort of like it's a nice warm feeling that you've been part of something. But what opportunities can you see for smaller subcontractors working with sort of like the tier one like yourself?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge for all of the supply chain. I think I think we've got a trusted supply chain, but I think sometimes governance gets in the way of actually sort of it prevents smaller sort of more niche contractors feeling that they can work with a tier one, but actually sort of I think hopefully what this project does is just show that actually a tier one contractor can work quite effectively with a whole range of subcontractors and suppliers. Really, there's certainly opportunity. It's just we need to overcome that sort of that fear that a tier one contractor is looking to impose a whole host of constraints and restrictions. That's not the case.
No, it certainly wasn't with us. I mean, we had a really good experience, and it was guided well. You know, it felt very light touch, but you felt like, okay, you know, we were learning ourselves in the way that we were presenting information and running a project. You know, that we were upskilling as well.
Yeah, ultimately that is the point, isn't it? You guys are the experts. If we're doing our job properly, all we're there to do is facilitate you, and that's what hopefully we did.
On impact, and I'm talking about a global and outside of this job. What are some of the impacts that, I mean, there's a lot of geopolitics that are going on, and we've got inflation and stuff like that. But for building and construction, and with special projects, I imagine that you are working with older buildings, and certainly with us through the GA brand. We're working on buildings that are sort of 20, 25 years old. What are some of the impacts that you're seeing are, that you are adding more risk or adding more concern in dealing with that?
Good question. Can I have a
Yeah.
to think about it?
Yeah.
Friend of friend.
I didn't realise you would challenge me like this in.
Well, I'll be kind.
So the challenge or challenges.
For instance, if I give it with what we do, some of the challenges are, if you work in the city and you need to change glass or you need to do a big refurbishment, the natural thing is let's scaffold it all up. But that's not business as usual.
No.
So we're having to really think about traffic management, working with the councils, so that you only work. So we might only be able to work at weekends, for instance, because we can shut the roads down, but we only get a weekend. So it's a small window. So the program goes out, but you have to really work your efficiency. And I just sort of shoot it from here, but in when you're doing major construction, so like bricks and mortar, and plastering and things like that, I imagine you have similar challenges?
Yeah, I think stakeholders generally, I think they all play a part, don't they? I think it's very difficult to keep everybody happy. That's a real challenge, and you're not gonna please everybody. I think for just taking this project as a prime example, we had the church and obviously sort of the congregation and visitors to think about. We then also had patients come into the surgery. We've got a school that sort of sits on the south side. It's got a busy sort of a busy road at the front of it. So you've got all of those challenges, and that's probably is particularly working in central London. I think logistics and keeping the peace amongst the chaos of central London. I think that's a real challenge.
Yeah, I mean, a good point. But how do you manage that? How big a team do you need for the comms and the project management?
I think it's having the right people that have the experience and sort of, I think that the confidence to actually sort of effectively manage these. So we have obviously sort of, you have management plans in place, but it's actually sort of, it's people that are able to react day to day and actually sort of see that we're all problem solvers. And I think it's just about having the right teams, actually sort of picking the right people for specific projects. I think that's key. And let's look at location, let's look at the type of work, and then sort of deploy the right people to manage it.
Is there something new? Have you seen a new way of working that's making that easier? Or
I think as in my 20 plus years in the industry, I think the sort of the type of people that are coming into construction are different. I come from a creative sort of background. I did a sort of an art degree. I think you've got different types of people coming into the industry that are actually sort of making a difference. It's sort of you're losing some of that sort of old school, which there's not sort of there's no slant on people that are born and bred into the industry, but you've got sort of people that have just got maybe a different view on things, a different way of approaching. I think that's just helping. That's it's just making the industry much more rounded, I think.
Do you think they're bringing more tech skills?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got sort of look at yourselves. You bring in sort of that technical side of things with the IT, sort of the point clouds and things like that we're talking about. And actually, sort of that is making a real difference to all of our lives on a project.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I've seen people talk about digital twin, and there's it's just a big, people argue about what is a digital twin. Is a photograph a digital twin, or is it a point cloud, or is that, does it have to be interoperable? That's one area that I'm fascinated in, and the more I spend on it and see the speed of expansion of thought. I mean, within 2 years, these things will be, everything will be teched up. There'll be sensors. When we've never employed it or deployed it, but I actually bought a sensor for these doors.
Oh, really?
So I was because we built up the point cloud model, that we could put sensor in that would feed the point cloud, and it would tell us how many times it went through.
Right.
It's like a nice sensor. So from a maintenance point of view, if there was something in place, they could ring up and say, if there's something wrong with the doors, we could plug into the point cloud, look at what the sensor was telling us, and diagnose it. Because 90% of the time, it is literally just a reset.
Yeah, okay.
At Christmas time, people are saying, "Oh, the doors are not working." It's because someone's put a Christmas tree right by the door, and the lights are just like driving the sensors mad.
So that's data that's collected. Is it? What happens to that data? Where does that?
The data's just collected, so it becomes useful information. We set up a whole division called FIMS, which is Facade Information Management System, which is a portal that collects data. So when we're doing these point clouds or walkthroughs or LiDARs, that you can tag in O&Ms, for instance. So we will do it on this one, where now it's sort of finished. We'll do a walkthrough, maybe even using the existing point cloud, and then we can put what materials. So visual O&M. So an engineer turns up, and he'll have that on an iPad, and he'll go, right, okay, what is this motor, what model? And he'll just be able to click and it'll bring it up. So there's no more looking in folders. There's no more, even online folders somewhere in a system, in a Teams folder that no one's updated. This will be something that gets updated. It's a visual O&M. Anyone can look at it. Me and you could go and pull up an iPad now, click it, and it will say, right, this is what was used, this is when it was last serviced, this is what the sensors are saying.
Right, okay.
And I think that's the way that I think certainly from maintenance, because we do a lot with facilities management, it has to be just for speed. Everyone's so economics says that everyone has to be efficient, and efficiency is sustainability.
Yeah.
Because that's, if I could resolve something online, I'm not sending an engineer in a van, carbons and all the rest of the carbonomics makes sense. So are you, from a company point of view, I know we talked about sustainability, but is there a drive for carbonomics, and how are SRM dealing with?
Yeah, I think sort of it's interesting actually. I was just, as you were talking there, I was thinking about more and more clients that I'm working with, and obviously sort of in the wider sort of company. I think sort of having that granular level detail is becoming much more relevant. I think sort of having easy access to information. I've just, funny enough, for this project, I've one of sort of the staff or my colleagues put together the O&M, and I think it sort of totaled 20 odd lever arch files. Nobody wants that. You want the sort of extensive amount of information, but you want it at sort of the touch of a button. It's just, that's the way that the world is going, and I think it goes back to sort of that earlier point that the people coming into the industry, the people that are much more sort of tech savvy than others, they bring that dimension actually, and that's only gonna evolve and improve. And I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I think what are the things we're all facing: XR, augmented reality, virtual, digital twin. It's just becoming, like even 18 months ago, it was, people think, oh no, it's almost. But now, if we had glasses or using age, we'd know what that paint colour is. We'd know where that wood was sourced for. And I think that's we've done that on a research job we did at the Scape, where we've loaded everything in, because things get scratched. So let's say, for instance, those bronze got damaged. you'd want to know exactly what that colour was rather than hunting down through
Yeah,
your 15
absolutely.
folders.
Yeah.
So, and it allows you, if it was something that had to be an emergency change and we couldn't get there, you could just say, oh, I know what that glass is and I know where it came from, and I could just repeat. So I think that's the thing from facilities and a sort of sustainable piece. It's a small piece, but I think that really helps going forward.
But I don't know about you. I just remember going to a lecture 15 years ago, and they were talking. They presented something on BIM, and I just sort of at the time I remember being sort of thinking of it, being such a skeptic about it, that it's a fad and it's not going to last. You know, sort of nothing can replace sort of a paper and pen drawing. You know, it's just things like that. It's just in my short time, and I count 20 years as being sort of not an awful lot of time in the industry, but I've seen that sort of that change, and it's positive.
Yeah, I mean, you can't beat a nice bit of
No,
paper
you
and
can't.
a red pen through the thing.
So different.
Yeah, but yeah, no technology. I think if we zoom out, and certainly people that I spoke to that are sort of like, you know, playing that big field, when you zoom out of what technology holds, I mean, buildings are going to be looking after themselves.
Oh, it's frightening, but obviously in a good way.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and it's not that it's going to make people unemployed. I think that's the big thing that everyone's saying, oh, AI and machine learning is going to put us all out of business. I don't think it has. I've said it so many times before. It's like AI doesn't have a point, you know, whereas we have a point. We can look at these things and have a real view of exactly what's happening, and we can be tactile with it, and we can make some decisions. So I think it's working like a co-pilot, working in partnership with AI.
And what we hopefully will have is actually sort of better records and better understanding of sort of build, particularly heritage buildings, that you're going to have sort of it's going to have a backstory, and that's what I like. We came into this project without sort of any real records. Obviously, sort of we know we can date when it was built and various sort of milestones sort of in its history, but ultimately we didn't have like a services drawing and things like that. Things that actually sort of now it's just part and parcel of sort of the information.
Because you guys have got a whole team that's now doing this sort of digital transformation.
Yeah, it's such an important part of the business, and obviously sort of construction generally. Yeah, there is a dedicated sort of workforce.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'd be interested to connect with these guys at some point, just see what they're doing. So, if you're king for a day, what's the transformation that you want to bring into the world with what we do, I suppose?
I think it's where it's heading to. I love the idea of the work that you've done here. You know, like sort of integrating that sort of digital side with, and actually sort of producing something physical that's right for the setting. I like that, and I like where it's going. I'm just sort of excited in terms of where that's heading. Really, I think.
I mean, are you sort of upskilling? Are you finding some pressure to go? Right, I need to learn about blockchain or.
I think you can never sit still, and I like to think that I upskill, and I think a lot of my growth has been through experience more than anything, and actually sort of learning, sort of taking the best and worst parts of each project and then sort of developing from there. But actually, it's getting to that point where we all need to be conscious of upskilling, really. And so I'm going to have to.
So any further thoughts or transformational ideas that spring to mind from our chat today?
I'm really intrigued in terms of that digital side of things, and why you chose the digital element sort of and bringing that into the project here. I think I think it's unique. It's not something that I've been involved with before, and actually so it'd be good to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, to be honest, it's a good question. I mean, it was something that we were already thinking about how we get involved in the transformational piece around O&Ms, and so it started with almost what's the ending goal, and I thought, okay, well, if we'd already started working with a company in Sweden called Winio, and they were saying, okay, well, when you're on your next job, why don't you think about actually using technology and really embedding it in? And this was sort of almost that first next job. It was a little bit early, but I thought, well, let's throw it in. Sure. So we would come out and we would just survey the piece, and then everything would be, DWGs and CAD files. But we used a LiDAR and a point cloud, and then a walkthrough. So with that, we could revisit it and measure off it quite accurately. So actually, when we drew it, we could actually then put it in the space. So the designer used without even coming to, and this would normally take 5-6 visits of someone coming in, checking it, because of the curvatures, because of the undulations, and the height of the screens. So because there's 3 screens, 2 were sliding and 2 were...
Because I remember that being quite an easy sort of process, really, like straightforward enough in the sense of the...
Well, when we came to site, it was quite easy, but because it had been back tested. So what that gave us, and what we wanted to achieve was, once it was designed, is to, with our own fabricators and with our own installers, to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. We don't want to spend days there scribing stuff in. We want to be able to go in and fit it and actually work out all the problems, because there was structural problems and the way that it was bolted and welded. And obviously it's covered in a beautiful bronze finish, but you don't want to see all the gubbins behind it. And at the same time, we do want to sort of like really drill into the structure unnecessarily. So we wanted to keep the fabric of the building as intact as possible. So you guys didn't have too much finishing work.
Yes.
So we employed that, and then we went to another layer where we said, okay, well, let's use gaming technology, and we used Unreal Engine to actually put a robot so that he could go in and out of the doors, work out the sensors, so that, when we spoke to the people who were BEA on the sensors and Tormax as well on the equipment, that they could get a flavour of what we were trying to achieve. Because I think there's nothing better than the whole team saying, okay, this is what we want to do. It needs to be a quality finish. It needs to look right first time. And, it's none of this sort of like thinking on site and cutting and carving that often goes on in these sort of bespoke projects. So, and that was working really well. And then after that, we thought, okay, once it's in, that if it ever gets maintained, and someone says, well, what's behind that? You don't have to take it all apart. You've got the drawings and they're all built into a sort of a nice scan model. So that was the driver for that. And that, all the guys that were involved from our point of view said it was really useful, because you're almost getting a 3D pictorial set of drawings by seeing it in action, and there's no miscommunication, no misrepresentation of what you think. Always, even though the guys are skilled, they don't want to be thinking about making on-site decisions that maybe an architect spent, months.
Yes, that's like tweaked by them.
Yeah,
actually, so.
That's right. Over too much silicon, can really spoil something.
Yeah.
So that's what helped us is what we got from the technology is actually being able to see it, making it work, and then sharing it and collaborating with the guys even before they got to site. And then when it was installed, when I look at what's finished and when I look at that original model and how, the team were, we have people in Sweden and Holland who are working on this, and our own guys, and how very similar it looks. So, when we share, some of this information, you'll see that, it's very similar. And the little robot gaming thing was part of that. I mean, it looks like it was, but because the robot can actually, that's in the game, you can spin around and look at different angles. There was a few things that it highlighted that we would like, for instance, the sensor when the doors open. If we hadn't locked the doors, for instance, you would clash.
Yeah.
So it was a risk. So it's picking out things like that, and being able to do stuff after the, like you've done the point cloud, so you could reference it now.
Yeah.
I mean, we use other technology. We use Mappool, we use OpenSpace, which we didn't use on this, which is a shame, which is the before and after, so you can roll back time
Oh, okay.
and see.
I've seen that.
So we've done that. But I mean, at the time it was quite cutting edge. It allowed us to collaborate off-site. It allowed it to be shared with a lot of the team. And we certainly were doing that a lot more now. So it was a sort of like touchstone for us to do that.
Fantastic.
Great. Thank you, Craig.
No,
really
great.
good to see you again.
Yeah,
really
and
nice
you.
to talk about the project.
Yeah,
and look forward to working on the next one.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.